Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss how to talk to your family about your estate plan. I'm attorney Mary Kate D'Souza, and I'm a practitioner with over 20 years experience in the area of estate planning, probate law, and elder law. I'm also a founder and chief legal officer of Gentreo. With me today is
Hi, I'm Julie Fry. I have about 20 years experience in elder care and am also one of the other founders of Gentreo. And I actually helped found Gentreo because of the experience that our family went through. About 4 or 5 years ago, we sat down with an attorney and tried to help our parents do estate planning. And when we did, they pulled out a book, sat it down, and asked us all these questions. And we thought, how can the normal everyday person do this without a super expensive lawyer? And that's how Gentreo was born. And we got started because we knew that our family is like almost every family that's out there. It's critically important to get estate planning done, but they didn't have the tools to do it themselves.
That's excellent. And of course, I see in the law practice what happens to families when they don't prepare. And besides having this knowledge professionally, it's also personal. I had a mom who had Alzheimer's and sadly passed away from it. And I lost my dad to cancer. And I know about the issues that having your affairs in order, how it impacts your family. So, as Julie said, Gentreo is passionate about this mission, and we're on a mission to protect 10 million American families. So, why is estate planning important? Why do we care about this, especially at the holiday time when we're preparing a turkey dinner? Why should we be talking about this? And those are all excellent questions. The main reason why you want to do it is because you care. It's important to you. You want to be able to protect what's important to you, which is mainly your family and your loved ones. By having your estate plans in order, you protect your family, your loved ones, your assets, and your choices. I've seen firsthand what happens to families when they don't have their things in order. When someone close to them is sick and dying, they're with me in court trying to get emergency guardianship orders to make important medical decisions for their loved one, when they would much rather be with the person who's dying. So they're involved with the court process, which is stressful. They're paying money to me to achieve their goals. And most importantly, they're not spending the time with the person that they love. By having your estate plan in order, you safeguard against these issues and make sure that when a crisis hits, you're able to be there for your loved one and have their choices upheld. That's why estate planning is so important.
So, excellent points. So, not only is it important to do, but it's important for you to make sure that all of your family knows how to use your estate planning documents and what your choices are. So, the first step when you're talking with your family during the holidays is making sure that you gather the information and prepare. These aren't easy discussions to have. And when you're sitting around the Thanksgiving and Christmas table, it's not the first topic that typically comes to mind, although it is one way to stop talking politics. What you can do before you get ready to have your kids come over or you get ready to pack up and go to your mom and dad's house is make sure that you get the right information in order. Make sure that you understand where your medical information is. Make sure that you create your emergency card. Make sure that you know what documents that you have. Make sure that you have gathered really critical information that you would want to make sure that you could share with your family so that if, God forbid, something did happen and your family member wasn't able to ask you about what your choices are or what your contacts are or how to take care of your dog if you're not there. You gather all that information ahead of time so that when they do need to access that information, everybody knows where to get it. Everybody knows what your choices are. Everybody knows how to access that information in an instant. The best way to do this is to put together all the information, and then store that in a digital vault. The reason a digital vault is so critically important is the fact that it doesn't matter if you are sitting in front of your laptop and a planned time and you have plenty of um, time to log on and get the information, or if, God forbid, you're in a hospital and you're needing to access medical information, you need to know what information is where and how to get instant access to it. And most importantly, you need to be able to control who has access to what information. For example, if you have a pet, and we have a pet dog named Butter, we love Butter to death, but our neighbor watches Butter when we go away. If we go away, we want to be able to share information with our neighbor about Butter. What does she eat? Who's her emergency vet? What's her daily routine, etc. But we don't want to share really important information like our will, our healthcare proxy, power of attorney, digital assets, login information. All that information can be shared with, let's say, my daughter, but not specifically shared with other types of users. So a digital vault gives you the opportunity to put information up, make it accessible, whether it's a planned time or if it's something that's in an emergency, and it gives the user the ability to decide who has what information. Getting that information ready and prepared before you even get ready for the holidays is really important. During the holidays, you want to be able to spend time with your family. You want to have everything organized ahead of time so that when people walk in the door, you're not having to play catch up. You are prepared, you're ready. And as conversations happen, you can actually talk to them about it. It's not something that you have to go out, find that information, or at a loss for words. Preparing ahead of time of what you want to discuss is a critical, important piece of getting ready for the holidays. The next thing we also want to make sure that you do is take time to review what your estate plan is. And that's so important because your life changes, your family's life changes, laws change, etc. You want to make sure that you understand what legal documents you already have in place. You want to understand where all those documents are, where they're stored, and then what information you need to share with your friends and family and loved ones. The legal documents that you had created in the past may need to be updated. And if so, make sure that you understand what you need to do, how you're going to make those changes, and what documents are critically important for you to have in your current life situation.
So true. So the Gentreo Family Digital Vault is a great feature of Gentreo because, as Julie's already indicated, you're able to store your documents there and share them with the people that you want. So it's wonderful that Gentreo offers that. We also offer the ability to create estate planning documents, which can be personalized, but they are state specific. So it's an opportunity for you to go through and create the essential estate planning documents you need. Now, what are those estate planning documents? There are 3 or 4 critical ones. The first one would be a healthcare proxy. The second one is a power of attorney. The third one is a will. You may also choose to have a trust with a will. So that's depending upon your circumstances. Also, as Julie's already indicated, there's the pet power of attorney. If you're a pet owner, this is another estate planning document that you'd want to complete. And finally, there's the emergency card, which Gentreo offers for free. You can go on and complete it. And that's one small step you can take in organizing your estate plan. So I've just listed the important estate planning documents. Let's break it down. The healthcare proxy, the first one that I mentioned, is the document in which you would appoint someone to make healthcare decisions for you if you were ever in a situation that you could not make healthcare decisions for yourself. At Gentreo, we also offer a HIPAA release as part of the healthcare proxy. Further, you have an opportunity to nominate second and third choices. Why do we offer you this option? Because it's all about planning. It's all about controlling. You pick someone right now, and then what happens? Maybe something happens to that person, or you have a falling out. Oftentimes in marriages that break apart, you name a spouse, and then when there's a divorce, you don't want that person serving anymore. So there's definitely reasons to have first, second, third choices. In addition to nominating someone to make healthcare decisions for you, within your healthcare proxy, you can also determine what kind of healthcare treatment you want. Now, for those of us who are in the prime of our life, maybe we don't have any feelings one way or the other on that issue. But for those of us who are older or maybe sadly diagnosed with a terminal illness, we may have strong feelings about this. And it's very important that, as Julie says, you discuss it with the people that you want to be making these decisions for you, but also that you write it down, that it's part of a legally binding document. So the Gentreo healthcare proxy gives you an opportunity to say what you would want for end-of-life planning, along with other issues. It also gives you an option to put in specific wishes or explicit exceptions, depending upon what kind of care you want. Now, the second document we talked about is the power of attorney. Think of it this way. A healthcare proxy has to do with healthcare personal decisions. A power of attorney has to do with financial and assets. With the financial power of attorney, it's the same thing. You get to appoint someone to act in your stead. You can set limits on the authority you want to give, and you can also set limits on the time. It's up to you. When you go through the process, you can see you walk through a process in which you can choose what authorities and how much time you want to give someone. Now, it's very interesting. Most of us would feel uncomfortable giving someone complete control over our finances. But that's something to think about, because the person you empower, you want to completely trust that they're going to be acting in your best interest and doing what you want. Now, the third document is the will. Most of us are familiar with this and have a vague understanding that it's something to do with your stuff when you die. And yes, that is true. And as a consequence, I think sometimes, Julie, people don't believe they need a will. They think, I don't have a lot of things. I don't really need to do that. So let's break it down. What happens if you don't do a will? The laws of intestacy in your state will determine what happens to your assets. So whatever you have will get divided up according to whatever the laws are. But your loved ones are still in a position where they have to go to court. And most of us have relationships in which not everyone gets along. No one has the perfect family or the perfect circle of friends. So without you picking someone, you're putting the task on your loved ones. You're burdening them with figuring out your stuff and figuring out who's going to be in charge. And most often, as I have seen, that ends up in fights and further conflict. And of course, it's already a stressful time because someone has died and people are grief-stricken and not at their best emotionally. So again, there would be an additional cost, an additional time, a time demand, but more importantly, it's the emotional cost that you're leaving people with without doing a will. So in addition to dictating where your assets would go, a will also gives you an opportunity, and in my opinion, more significantly, if you're the parent of minor children, an opportunity to nominate who you want to raise your children. If, God forbid, the worst happens to you, you want to make sure that it's the people you want raising your children and not a judge deciding that. Finally, with a will, you have an opportunity to nominate who you want to be in charge. This person is called the personal representative. Think of it as the manager. This is the person who is going to uphold your wishes and make sure everything gets done the way you wanted it. Now, some of us may prefer a revocable living trust. A revocable living trust is another way to manage your assets. The difference is, unlike a will, which goes into effect when you die, a revocable living trust goes into effect while you're alive. You create the living trust and fund it while you're alive. It's an opportunity in which you can take assets that you own and take it out of your ownership and put it into the trust's ownership. The trust then controls. The trust is managed by a person known as a trustee, and you set up the terms of who you want to benefit from your trust. These people are called beneficiaries. Usually, under a revocable living trust, you're the first trustee and you're the prime beneficiary until you're incapacitated or you die. Then the terms of the trust usually stay in place and assets are distributed per the trust, whatever you've set up. Now, a challenge of having a trust is that you need to fund it. Funding it is critical to effectuate the terms of the trust. And that's oftentimes why people might not pursue a trust. It's a little bit more work. But go to Gentreo to determine if a trust is right for you. Finally, there's the pet power of attorney. This is a document similar to the healthcare proxy that we talked about and the financial power of attorney. This is the power of attorney for pet care. Think about how much money you would want your pet care costs to take up. For example, we've both been familiar with situations in which a loved one leaves their pet with a neighbor and an emergency happens, and the neighbor's thrust into making a decision about, should the dog be saved? How much should we pay? And it's all very stressful when it's not all written out and organized ahead of time. That's the beauty of having a power of attorney, a pet power of attorney. It protects the pets, the neighbor or the friend who's serving as the pet caregiver, the vet, and quite frankly, you. If your neighbor agrees to a surgery or emergency treatment of your animal that goes beyond your budget, you'd still be on the hook for it. So it's important that all that information be documented. And finally, the emergency card. Although technically not a legal document, it's still an opportunity, like all these other documents that we've talked about, to express what you want to happen in the matter of an emergency. And it's important information to communicate with first responders so that they're able to quickly treat you and get you the best medical care.
That was a great review of what the actual legal documents are. But like you said, estate planning is more than just a document itself. It's how are you preparing your family in the event of an emergency? And the holidays are a perfect time for you to start identifying what your choices are, making sure you coordinate your family, and creating that one place that everybody can turn to in the event of an emergency. Use this holiday time when you're talking to your family, when you have them all together, to make sure that everyone understands where to go to, how to log on. If you have a digital vault like the Gentreo digital vault, how do they log on? How do they get access to that? And make sure that they have a clear understanding of the fact that you have made those decisions and how they access that information. One of the things I've heard you, Mary Kay, talk about is the fact that where we store our information that's not digital is really important. Because, for example, if you have a will, when we got started, our parents were like, no problem, we have a will. And we're like, okay, where is it? It's in the safety deposit box. Well, that's fine and great, except for the fact that I did not have authority to go into their safety deposit box. So in the event that I needed to access that will, there would be no way that I could get it. One of our other friends, this is my favorite. He said, don't worry, my dad has it all planned. He's got it in a Nike bag under the bed. And I was like, and how are you going to get access to that? Because you're 12 hours away. And so what you want to make sure is that as your family comes together, that it gives you the opportunity to say where documents are, to say, don't worry, all these decisions have already been made. This is something you don't have to worry about. Like you said, in the event of an emergency, and when people are in the hospital and when these documents are needed, these are things that these are decisions you can make very quickly, very easily. And with Gentreo, we make it completely affordable and doable by, you don't have to be a lawyer, and any person can create an estate plan that protects their family. But if you make those decisions now, it saves your family tons of time, heartache, legal costs, and confusion. And there's such strife during emergencies as it is. Being able to take this off of your family's plate is a huge act of love. It doesn't take long. It's easy to do. It's affordable. And what we want to do with Gentreo is create that one place that the families can turn to, so that not only they have access to the information, but they know how to change their estate plan as their life changes, because everyone's life changes. It's not only like, tax laws change or legal, like the laws change themselves, but it's also, like Mary Kate said, your family changes. People get married, divorce, children, you buy new homes, you have new assets. What we do at Gentreo, one of the unique things about us is that we aren't just the one and done documents. You talked about a ton about all the documents. Those are an absolute given. We can walk you through those. You can create those easily, quickly, and affordably. But we take it another step further. It's not just the one and done. We help you grow and your estate plan grow with you. We make sure that as your needs change, your estate plan changes with that. And what we want to do is kind of be like that guardian angel that's always watching out for you and your family, because these are really important, critical decisions. And we want to make sure that they are easy to make, that you understand what the implications of those decisions are, and that you have the tools to do so. Most importantly, we want to make sure that it's completely accessible to the everyday person, and that they can share that with their family members. Because this holiday season, as you're talking with your family members, it's a great opportunity to really coordinate everyone. And especially, making sure that you have a family meeting that gives you the opportunity to address this is really critical.
Yes, it's definitely true. And what happens is when people don't take the opportunity to do their estate planning, it causes chaos. So you really want to take advantage of the times that we have together in order to get your affairs in order. So one of the resources that we'd like to talk about is the Gentreo Guide to Talking to Your Family During Thanksgiving or another holiday. And most of us gather at that time. Now, of course, 2020 is a little bit different with COVID, but we've all become very savvy users of Zoom and other opportunities to access people remotely. So even though we may not physically be at the table together, there's still an opportunity for us to gather and discuss these issues. Again, my experience as an attorney, I would recommend that everyone have a voice in the discussion. We all know that not everyone gets along, and we all know that within families there are certain stronger personalities and maybe others that aren't as strong. Nonetheless, in order for everyone to gather and be involved, it's important that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, especially if you're meeting with elderly parents and you're all adult siblings. It's an opportunity for sort of childhood issues to come to the fore. What I would recommend is that everyone, before they meet, think about it. Think about what really needs to get done so you don't go down those rabbit holes and you stay focused on what's important. I'd also suggest that you put someone in charge, someone to run the meeting, kind of like at a business meeting, and set an agenda. If your parents aren't able to do that, you could help them out by setting it up and at least starting the conversation about what needs to get done. You might not know, your parents might have already done this, and maybe it's just a question of finding out where the documents are. Or they might not have done anything. And now, after attending this webinar, you realize the importance of doing these documents, of creating them. So you want to make sure they get done. So in addition to having a time and a place to meet and everyone's welcome and invited and someone's in charge, It's also helpful if there's an opportunity for there to be some sort of pre-discussion. If you want to send emails around or whatever to narrow the issues, and so everyone has an opportunity to realize, okay, what are we talking about? And hopefully, in the spirit of Thanksgiving and out of love for parents, the topics will stay focused on the parents' needs, the elderly parents' needs, and not on the children's needs. Now, that being said, Julie, I'd also say one of the best ways to motivate your parents to do this is for you to do it yourself. Once you've gone through the process, you can sort of personalize it and be able to show that it's not too hard to do. And that, again, with Gentreo, you can do it anywhere, anytime. So those would be my recommendations for how to organize and structure a family meeting. But you could also go to gentreo.com to find out more resources.
While you're visiting with your family, in addition to estate planning, there's some other things that I would really suggest that you keep an eye out for, especially as you visit your elderly parents. In terms of visiting with your elderly parents, make sure that when you visit your home, you keep an eye out to see if they can still manage on their own and they don't need additional assistance. This is everything from if they're still driving, make sure you have them take you for a ride and make sure that as they drive that they are still capable of safely driving. If not, you need to start talking about additional ways for them to get around and start planning for that. For example, and another thing, make sure that their home is accessible to them. An example of this would be like going to the bathroom. So my father, who has Alzheimer's, has a really hard time standing up. And so we had to put in a grab bar in the bathroom so that he could safely stand up. My brother came in and was able to put in a new shower so that he could sit down and shower. So make sure that their home is meeting their needs. Do they need ramps? How are they doing walking? In terms of the walking and safety, make sure that rugs are picked up. There are no tripping hazards. Make sure that their home is adequate in terms of heat source and making sure that they have like fans during the summer and adequate heat during the winter. Make sure that their kitchens are still meeting their needs. Can they still cook for themselves? If not, is Meals on Wheels an option in your area? Also, you want to make sure that you talk to their neighbors or talk to their friends and see that they have a daily routine, that they all know how to contact you in the event of an emergency, and that there's somebody keeping an eye out to make sure day to day somebody's checking in on them. Because the holidays gives us an opportunity to see them face to face. Use that opportunity to make sure that the living situations that they're in is meeting their needs. And if not, you need to start having discussions about what kind of community resources can keep them safely at home. We all want to stay at home. And thankfully, with things like the support on the agencies on aging or home care, hospice, etc., we can help keep them safely at home. But it's important that you, as the family members, make sure that their needs are adequately met.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar on how to talk to your family about estate planning and other important issues during this holiday season. We hope you found it informative. At this time, we'll take any questions that you may have. My parents did their will many years ago, but since then their attorney retired. Is a new will required, or is the original one still valid? Okay, thank you. That's an excellent question. So, yes, as long as the will, when it was first executed, was executed properly, it would be valid. Reading through the lines here of this question, another recommendation I would give is to review the will, have your parents review the will and see if it still meets their current desires. Maybe when they created it, it was at a time in their life when they had one or minimal assets or whatever. Now they may be thinking about something else, or maybe there's grandchildren in the picture. There may be changes that want to be made, but it's not that it would have to be made if it wasn't executed. As long as your parents have that will, it could be effective. So the next question is, my entire family lives out of state. How do I coordinate with all of them? Julie, do you want to answer this?
Sure. So there's actually a couple different ways that you want to do this. Thankfully, now most people, especially with COVID, are used to using technology, are used to using Zoom calls. And like Mary Kate said, she gave you great examples. Having that family meeting and somebody who can lead that family meeting is critically important. And this is where technology is great. If you can't get on a Zoom call, which many of us hate them, you can also just do a phone call and you can do a group chat. The other thing that you want to make sure that you do is, again, like Mary Kate said, have an agenda, make sure that you understand what questions need to be asked, and then coordinate with everyone, hopefully as a group, and if not individually. That's the first step. The most important thing is making sure you create that one digital home so that everybody can go to and access it. And so, for example, with Gentreo, the Gentreo Digital Vault is built so that you, as the user, know what questions to ask. You have the ability to upload all that information and then select who you specifically can share what specific information with. So it's all about getting the information, uploading that information, and then sharing it as needed. Because all of us are either, all spread all across the country, or not sitting in front of our computers or waiting by our phone books, waiting for an emergency to happen. When emergencies happen, we all want to make sure that we know where to go to. And thankfully for Gentreo, it's pretty easy with the digital vault.
All right. Okay. My mother is an early Alzheimer's patient. Can she do this? Oh, I'm sorry about your mom. And that's a great question. So the best way to determine if she still has the ability to create her own estate planning documents is to talk to her. If you feel, in your opinion, that she understands enough to make her choices, then yeah, she would still have the ability to do it. If she's at the point in her diagnosis, in her illness, where her memory is so impaired that she can't understand these topics, then sadly, it's gone beyond the point where she still has the ability to create these documents. And now you're on a path where you need to seek guardianship of your mom in order to have authority to make her healthcare decisions. Another person to bring into this conversation would be her, either her primary care physician or the physician or the treatment provider for her Alzheimer's, because they'd be able to give you more insight into her actual capacity to create these documents. It's really important that the person, when they create the documents, has capacity, because if it's not done with capacity, there'd be invalid documents, and it almost would create more of a fight with family members if they were done under a cloud of suspicion or fraud because, mom lacked the capacity to do it. I hope everything goes well. My father is going to remarry. How do I make sure that his money and home are protected? Well, that's a great question. Julie, do you want to, or do you want me to answer this?
So I think it'll be a bit of both of us.
Okay.
So the first thing that you want to make sure that you do is you want to make sure that you actually speak to your family members, and you want to talk to your father, because you want to understand what he has done and what kind of planning he's already put in place. And then from there, you want to make sure that you have all of your legal documents in order. And if he is planning on making changes, that you're aware of those changes.
Yeah, I think those are all excellent points. I'd also say, just respectfully, that to remember that it's not your will, it's your dad's will and your dad's choices about what he wants. Usually, on a remarriage situation, particularly in late in life, there may be a prenuptial agreement or something in place that each spouse enters the marriage with whatever they have, and the expectation would be, upon them leaving the marriage, at death, that their assets would go to their family. That's not always the case. But again, these are choices that your dad would have to make. I do agree with what Julie said about that it's really important that you have a conversation with your dad and that your dad is open with you so that there's no surprises at the end. If my document is notarized with raised seal, how how does it work to have it saved digitally and still be valid? Oh, that's a very good question. So again, particularly in 2020 with COVID, a lot of institutions that were very rigid about having to feel the raised seal and other signs of an original document. A lot of that has gone more relaxed due to the fact that we know, like, in person isn't always possible. I would say this: with a raised seal document that's scanned onto the system, and you're able to provide that anywhere, anytime through your phone, as we've talked about with the Gentreo Digital Vault, that gives doctors or financial institutions something to rely on. And maybe they might say, okay, we'll accept this for now, but we need you to bring in the actual document. But that's fine. You'd be able to do it. Again, we recommend with the Gentreo Digital Vault, not only that you store the documents there, but you share the information with your chosen loved ones so that certain loved ones are going to know where the paper documents are. And as Julie said, and it's very counterintuitive, a safe deposit box or a safe are really not safe, good places for these documents. And why is that? It's because of access. So wherever the paper documents are stored, they need to be secure and accessible. What does funding a trust mean? Okay, so I mentioned this briefly in our conversation about what types of legal documents are part of an estate plan, and I mentioned a revocable living trust. A revocable living trust is an agreement. It's a document in which you express what you want to happen to your stuff. It doesn't have to do with guardianship of your children or anything like that. It just has to do with whatever stuff you want the trust to manage. And that's where the funding comes in. Writing things on paper does not make it so. So let me give you an example. If you create a trust and then your goal is to put all your real estate in the trust, you have to deed, say you have two houses, you have to deed your home into the trust and your other piece of property into the trust. And if you do not put those homes into the trust, your trust is not going to cover those homes. The trust only controls what it owns. So your trust may say, I want to give my vacation home to Julie. But if your trust doesn't own the vacation home, the trust can't give it. Funding a trust is a little bit tricky and a little bit of work, but it also can be done. And Gentreo offers a lot of resources about how to do it. And how you transfer assets into the trust depend upon the nature of what that asset is that you want to transfer. We talked about real estate with deeds. With bank accounts, if you have a bank account that you want the trust to manage, you talk to your bank about how to open up a trust bank account and transfer that account in there. If you have IRAs or other assets, stocks, whatever, talk to your financial advisor and they'll guide you on how to create a trust account for those assets. Well, that looks like that's the last of our questions. Thank you again for joining us for this webinar on how to talk to your family about estate planning. We're really appreciative of the time that you spent with us. And more importantly, we hope that you learned and that you're ready to join Gentreo and get your affairs in order.
Thank you again, and happy holidays.